On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, the NBA season is over. The stupid Boston Celtics won, and it's off-season time. Thankfully, we talk about whether the Raptors are going to sign three major players between now and July 1, and talk about another major guy in Jakob Poeltl who could or could not be traded. We'll get into why that's a good or very bad idea. All coming up today as Vivek Jacob returns to the show.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, June the 18th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, baby. The link is in the description of the podcast. It's free to join. It's a great place to come hang out, talk Raptors, talk draft, talk about how mad we are. The stupid Boston Celtics won the title. It's a great place to come hang out among friends who love the podcast. It's a great little community we got built around the show. Again, free to join as always. Link in the description of the podcast. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, all that good stuff on your audio app of choosing. You can also go to YouTube and support the video version of the show by subscribing to the YouTube channel, clicking the notification bell, which will give you a push notification every single time the show goes live. And you can join the live chat and all that good stuff over there as well. We appreciate all of our YouTube heads. Thank you for supporting the show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And we will get started here, bringing in our old pal back from his time traveling with the World Cup Canadian team for the T20 Cricket World Cup. That's a really great way of saying it. I'm good at sentences, as it turns out. Here's a guy who's better at sentences than me, who I've missed dearly. It's Vivek Jacob. How the hell are you, pal?
I'm doing great, man. Had one of the best experiences of my life working a T20 Cricket World Cup with an actual team. It wasn't just like covering it as a journalist, which would have been really cool too. But to actually be part of the team, be in team meetings, be on the bus to the games, be in the dugout for the games, all of that, like just super surreal. And then for Canada to get their first ever win at a T20 World Cup, that was super special to be a part of. Just an amazing bunch of guys to work with. Had a blast with them. And yeah, hopefully I get to see them soon. But for now, I am more than happy to be back talking Raptors with you.
Yeah, that sounds like not at all a letdown whatsoever. Time of my life, one of the best experiences ever. Okay, time for Sean to yell at me through a screen for 30 minutes. Cool. As we talk about a pretty bad basketball team, no less. On today's show, we are going to talk about said pretty bad basketball team. We're going to talk about a guy who is a polarizing figure in these parts, Jakob Poeltl, where he fits into the team. We're going to kind of sort of continue our off-season improvements conversation about guys going into next year. Of course, Poeltl, we kind of know what he is. There's less room for improvement, but there is a lot of interesting ground to cover as far as it comes to his place within the team next season and going forward. Off the top, though, of course, if you heard, the NBA Finals mercifully ended last night. We don't have to think about the stupid Boston Celtics anymore. They're definitely not going to keep on talking about how they have the most championships in history for the rest of time, right? It's all over after last night, right? Please no. We're gonna quickly turn the page on the stupid finals and talk about what everyone likes: transactions, the offseason, baby. Of course, a new wrinkle with the updated CBA is that teams can negotiate with their own free agents between now and the start of the free agency window on whatever, June 30th, July 1st. I always forget the day. They keep on changing it and the time, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is that the Toronto Raptors could, in theory, by the time July 1st rolls around, have already signed Immanuel Quickley to his new contract, Scottie Barnes to his Fun Max extension, and in theory, Gary Trent Jr. as well as a pending UFA. They have the right to negotiate with him now before he hits the open market. Let's dig into that right now, Big V. How you feeling? What are you thinking about these three guys? Let's just sort of throw a number out there. Over under 1.5 of these guys sign with the Toronto Raptors between now and July 1st. What you got?
Oh, between now and July 1st, I will probably lean towards the under.
Okay.
I mean, I think in the case of Quickley, I think there's an advantage to not signing him immediately, right? Like his cap hold is about 12 mil. And so you probably want to drag that out as far as you can. And so I think they'll probably wait for some of those restricted offers to come in. And so I think that one drags out, and then it's a question of, okay, between Gary and Scottie, what happens there? And so obviously with Scottie, this is an extension, so it's not going to kick in until the season after. So there's everything to gain from getting it done as soon as possible. And so that one I could see happening. And then Gary, I think, is also up in the air where, the Raptors themselves might say, hey, like, we don't think the market value is too hot on this. And so if he's got a number higher than they think he's worth or will net out to be in the market, then they could just play that out, right? So if I had to choose right now, I'd probably go with under 1.5.
Yeah, I think that's probably the safe bet. Although I do think you're right on Quickley, like just order of operations, cap machinations wise, it probably makes more sense to do that after they've done whatever they're going to do. Like, for example, their cap space avenue closes if they were to sign Quickley to a new contract today, for example. And so, yeah, I think it makes sense to hold off on that one. Scottie Barnes, I would not be shocked at all if that gets done. It feels like that's been reported by Doug Smith that it's basically a formality at this point. They're going to give him the max extension, which I think is the right thing to do, as you do with your really fun, exciting young players on rookie contracts. The Gary Trent Jr. thing is, I think, super fascinating. I have come fully around on just keep the guy. The free agent class is lean. It's not super sexy. And I don't know if the Raptors are going to be the sort of apple of any of these free agents' eyes when it comes to, pursuing their next gig, just because of where they are competitively, right? Like they're just not in a spot where you can go and say, hey, Contavious Caldwell Pope, come play for us, when contenders upon contenders are going to be lusting after his services and on down the line. I think that repeats itself for a lot of the guys sort of at the top of the market. And so I'm of the mind that just pay Gary Trent Jr. what it's going to take. As much as it's the exclusive window for the Raptors in Trent to negotiate, I'm sure Gary Trent Jr.'s agents have some idea of what might be out there on the open market from a team like, say, Orlando, who I think is probably going to aim for bigger fish. Paul George, plenty of rumors going on there, Malik Monk, et cetera, et cetera. I just think get it squared away now. Gary Trent Jr., we know, fits with the most important players on this team. We also know he's not perfect, but I think you can sort of, again, perfect is the enemy of good, that type of thing, right? Like if you can just get Gary Trent Jr. on a reasonable deal to provide his 3-point shooting. He's not really my cup of tea as a player, frankly. I do think that shoot first guys who don't offer a ton else in terms of creation or defense or whatever, it's kind of a model of player that's going to be phased out of the league in the next 10 years or so. But for now, he still offers high-end 3-point shooting on a team that desperately needs it. And I'm of the mind that, whatever it is, 3 years, 18 mil a year, whatever it's going to take, I think you just pay it to Gary Trent Jr. I don't think there's a ton of opportunity cost by paying him, even if it's maybe slightly over market value. And frankly, I think he's probably someone who around the league, Big V, is looking at mid-level exception money in most cases. So even if you come in slightly above the mid-level, I feel like you got a pretty good shot of landing Gary Trent Jr. and bringing him back to Toronto. Aside from the sort of other suitors and things like that, where are you at when it comes to should the Raptors be hoping to keep Gary Trent Jr. in town? Are you kind of on the side of me, or are you looking to greener pastures perhaps?
I'm happy to bring back Gary at, a fair price. I think if you can, overpay a bit to get a shorter term, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But I would not want to commit to paying, 20 mil plus for 4 years, I think the sweet spot is probably like another 2-year deal. And then, if you can sort of get that done, then you go into the season knowing that you have that 3-point shooting in the bank. You can try to see if there's opportunities for growth. We saw just a slight uptick in the passing as the season went.
The bar
It was
is
a
on
low
the
bar.
floor, and he
It
just
was
barely stepped over it.
And so, I mean, again, at the end of the day, he's a young player, right? So you
Mhm.
want to see if there's any way you can get any more kind of development out of him, whether it's even to just, up his trade value and sort of go from there, right?
Mhm.
So I think the sweet spot is probably finding that 2-year deal where you just, push the envelope down the road a little bit, kick the can down the road a little bit. And I would not feel too hot about a 4-year deal, if it
No.
started to get into the 20s. I think at that point you might just have to eat whatever it is for this year and see whatever bargain deals that you can find and just live with it.
At that point, if it's like, okay, you can only get Gary Trent Jr. for 4 years, 80, I would rather renounce his bird rights, decline Bruce Brown's option, and just throw all of your cap space at Malik Monk.
Yeah,
If you're going to overpay for someone with a little bit more talent and creation ability.
100%.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at there. Not to say that Malik Monk would choose to come to Toronto. Other teams have lots of money and jobs to offer him as well. But that's kind of my read on that situation. Last thing, quick here. I'm going to put you on the spot real fast. Just guess the terms for Gary Trent Jr. and Immanuel Quickley. There's no suspense really with Scottie Barnes, but give me the years and the total number of dollars for Quickley and Trent that you expect to be inked on the dotted line, whether with the Raptors or somebody else between now and the end of free agency.
Yeah, so I think with Quickley, I will probably go to about 4 years, 10 somewhere in the range of 105 to 110.
Okay.
I think he's going to end up over 100 mil. And so, yeah, I think the high point is probably 110. But I could see it probably being like a 105, 106 deal.
Mm-hmm.
With Gary, so I think the one thing that helps the Raptors is like Grayson Allen kind of set that baseline where he got 4 years, 70 mil. So you would like to think that Grayson Allen is a better player than Gary Trent Jr. And so, you don't expect
Certainly far more odious to have to root for, though. So you got to make that in.
Yes, exactly. So I think based on that, you would like to think you can get a deal done. Again, if you're overpaying for the short term, you could see maybe like a 2-year 35 mil deal. I could see something like that playing out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. You and I right on the same wavelength with Quickley. I had 27.5 mil
After 3 weeks apart.
Right? Just it touches my soul to have you back in my life, my friend. I think 4 years, 110 sounds just about exactly on the money for Quickley. And I think that deal is going to age fantastically from the Raptors' perspective. Maybe not so much from Quickley's end, but that's the stupid bargain of RFA is boy, oh boy, you kind of get screwed. It's just kind of the way it works in the NBA. When it comes to, and not to say that getting $110 million is to be screwed either, but I think open market, you could probably get more if you're Quickley, if not for RFA rules. I digress. When it comes to Trent, yeah, I would guess 2 years, 38 is what it comes in at to stick with the Raptors. Surely a player option in there as well, as Masai Ujiri just loves those, baby. We will come back on the other side, talk about a guy who himself has a player option on the last year of his deal. It's Jakob Poeltl, an important player for the team. They lost basically every game he didn't play last year, save for 1 or 2 or 3. We get into where he fits into the team, his offseason to come, improvements needed, and all of that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, baby. It also means the WNBA as the NBA finals are over. The Stanley Cup finals are very close to being over as well. and you can bet it all over on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP. That's already happened. It was Jaylen Brown. You can also bet on Connor McDavid to surprise and win in a losing effort on the Conn Smythe side of things in the NHL if you want to go and do that. And also you can bet on any, who's going to hit one out of the park, who's going to hit the most threes in the next Caitlin Clark game. It's all there for you at FanDuel to go and peruse. Speaking of the WNBA, I'm not sure if you've heard, but there's a bit of a Rookie of the Year race going on between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. You could also probably throw Cameron Brink and her 9 block shots a game into the mix there too. If you want to go bet on who's going to win Rookie of the Year in the WNBA, you can go and do that. You should go peruse FanDuel's super easy to use app and go and bet on the action that you want to go and bet on. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Back at it here with our guy, Vivek Jacob. He's back from his travels around the United States for the T20 Quick Cricket World Cup, and I'm extremely happy to have him back as we continue a series we kind of kicked off before he took off on the sort of summer improvements we want to see for various members of the Toronto Raptors. And the guy we're going to talk about today, less in the range age-wise, where you typically see massive season-to-season improvements. This guy's kind of been the same player for, 6-7 years at this point. Maybe there's not a whole lot else to change about his makeup as a guy, but he's very important to the Toronto Raptors nonetheless and is worth discussion. It is, of course, Jakob Poeltl, everyone's favorite topic of discussion around the Raptors. This never gets tiresome at all, thinking about the Raptors acquiring him, what went into it, all of the decision-making that followed, et cetera, et cetera. I think I saw our pal Ben Chapman, who's usually in the Discord, but he's been inactive in the Discord. Ben, come back. We love you. But he made a good point. I can't remember who. It might have been to Samson, when Samson kind of posted on the Hell website last week about how Jakob Poeltl has become underrated. And Ben's point was there maybe has not been a player since Russell Westbrook who the circumstances of their trade to a team set them more up to fail within the eyes of the fan base than Jakob Poeltl. Just a really tough situation for him, but he's been pretty darn good as a Toronto Raptor, and they lost like every game he didn't play last season because he's pretty darn good. Big V, we can get into the sort of improvements in a second here, but I just want to sort of get your thoughts on how do you view Poeltl within the structure of this team? Do you view him as like expendable, as someone the Raptors should be eagerly looking to trade this summer? Is he someone who needs to be on the team going into next season? I think there are a lot of schools of thought on this. Plenty of people who just want to see him shipped off. I think that's short-sighted and dumb, but people can disagree. People can be wrong, et cetera, et cetera. Where are you at with Jakob Poeltl and his place within the Raptors before we dive into the stuff we want to see him work on this summer?
He's a good player. He's a good fit with that starting lineup. I think that when you even look at this NBA Finals that just played out, there's a couple ways that you can do it. Obviously, you lean towards Boston because of the way they were able to space the floor and the effectiveness with which they were able to execute with having Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis. But at the end of the day, Dallas also got to the finals with, Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively. It's so those are more your traditional bigs, and so it can be done. And now, obviously, we'll point to the elite backcourt that they have in Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and the way that fits.
No, they're actually frauds, Vivek. This is how it works. They lost the finals. They're bad, actually. Crazy that they made the finals whilst being bad.
And so I think in an ideal world, you would get someone who gives you a bit of a different option, right? And so you theoretically look at the way Kelly Olynyk complements Jakob Poeltl as the backup 5. Now, you'd still like Kelly to be able to play a higher level of defense than he does currently. The same way, you'd wish there were more tools in Jakob Poeltl's offensive toolbox. And so, that tandem is not perfect by any means, but in theory, you could see how that could be something that could be viable in the long term. And the other part of that is going to be getting them on the right contracts. And
Right.
so as long as you have that sort of timeshare, you just want to make sure you're not overpaying for either one, or you put yourself in a bind where you can't address other weaknesses.
Mhm. Yeah, I am fully with you. Sorry, I'm just about to do some performance art on the podcast. I'm just getting my props ready. But yeah, I'm fully with you. Jakob Poeltl is imperfect. He is not like the ideal center by any means in the modern NBA. But that doesn't mean he's bad, and that doesn't mean that he shouldn't be on the team, and that doesn't mean you can't work around his imperfections. I have continued to make the point. He very much reminds me of Jonas Valanciunas and sort of what he was to the Raptors 10 years ago, where it's like, okay, this guy is pretty good. This guy is a capable starting center. He does a lot of interesting things for us, obviously different players. JV, obviously more offense tilted. Yak, a little bit more balanced, I think, in the way he delivers his impact. And eventually you might want to upgrade on that guy to go and win a championship, as the Toronto Raptors did. Doesn't mean you have to do it today. Doesn't mean you have to cut bait because he's not perfect. And just let this piece of paper that I have here, let this represent the idea of trading Jakob Poeltl this summer for like futures. Throw it in the trash. It's stupid. It's such a dumb concept to me of, Jakob Poeltl, this guy who all of his strengths amplify the strengths of the most important players on this team. He is the guy who helps Immanuel Quickley run effective pick and roll. He is a guy who allows Scottie Barnes to be in his ideal position defensively as a low man helper on the baseline, with Jakob Poeltl there as the first line of rim protection defense. He is someone who they run so much of their offense through at the elbows in Darko Rajakovic's system, and he does it pretty darn well as a passer from the high post. He is someone who sets monstrous screens to send RJ Barrett hurtling towards the rim, where he cannot miss a shot ever since he started playing with Jakob Poeltl. The most important thing about next year for the Raptors is development. It is getting these guys, the 20-something dudes on this team who they're building this thing around, as much runway, as much repetition as possible within a functional basketball environment to actually see what you have with these guys. We saw last year when Jakob Poeltl wasn't available, that team was absolutely rudderless. They had no identity. They had nothing, no ideas. It was just, okay, roll out the ball and try to play some basketball. But without what Jakob Poeltl does, they were utterly incapable of playing competent ball. I don't think you can go into next season unless you're trading Jakob Poeltl for someone who is as good or better at those things. There's just no sensible case to me to trade Jakob Poeltl. Even if you're someone who wants to tank and wants to be at the high end of the lottery, you can do that with Jakob Poeltl on the team, still providing a basis for development for your most important players. End of rant. I just think it's just such a dumb, short-sighted, like cap-brained idea to be like, well, this guy's not perfect and they should try to lose next year. So let's trade the guy who makes things easier for all of the most important players on the team. Point over. Do you have a retort? I'm tired.
Not a retort, but more so just like to sum it all up. I wasn't a fan when the Yak trade was made. That was looking at the fit of the roster back then, and I didn't see it with with Pascal, with Scottie. You had 3 non-shooters on the floor. Now, when you look at this team, you've got Quickley in the mix. You've got hopefully this version of RJ that sticks around and is just so amazing to watch offensively. And then you take in some more improvement in Scottie's 3-point shot. You take Gary's shooting in there, and it's a lot more palatable in terms of the fit. Now, again, is it a perfect fit? No. Ideally, in a perfect world, would it be Marc Gasol? Sure, who can space the floor and play an amazing defense and all of that. Is there another Marc Gasol in the league right now? Doesn't look like it, right?
No.
And so I think this is a good fit for now. Are there ways to maybe make the team better in the future? Possibly. But I think for now, looking at the fit right now, it is tenable. It is something that helps the team. And so why not just move forward with it?
Yeah, the urge to just move on from him is in the sake of lottery balls, no less. It's truly maddening to me. The team without Jakob Poeltl down the stretch last season was a misshapen disaster. You don't, even if your goal is to not be very good next year, again, with how competitive the league is going to be, 14 teams in the West probably being pretty good, teams in the East taking steps, like if things aren't going super well, which is possible, even with Jakob Poeltl on the team, they'll have a little escape hatch and they can go to their stupid tank thing in the last couple months and get some lottery balls and everyone will be stupid and happy. But you don't need to cut off one of the single most important fulcrums of your entire team to ensure that happens from day one. It's nonsense. Find a big who fits into the mix a little bit. I'm perfectly okay with that. A Deron Holmes, a Khalil Ware, an Yves Missi, whoever it ends up being. If they draft a big at 19 or 31, perfectly fine with that. I think that's an important thing to do for the long-term viability of this front court. But to just trade Jakob Poeltl for parts and picks, absolute nonsense to me. Get a grip and get yourself together. Frankly, it's ridiculous. All right, let's pivot and talk about what we want to see from Yak this summer, as far as improvements go, as far as things that he can do to better ingratiate himself in the hearts and minds of Toronto Raptors fans and within the team itself. We will do that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts needed, the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Back at it here with our pal, Vivek Jacob. Really, it's just such a delight to have you back, buddy. Missed you so much. It's nice to have someone handsome on the podcast again.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a reminder, Locked On Sports Today 24/7. Go check it out. It is your daily, all-day streaming channel with Locked On shows covering all the biggest stories in sports. Going to be a great spot to be next week for the NHL and NBA draft coverage that's going to be going on right now. Stanley Cup Finals coverage. And there's a great Oilers-Panthers crossover episode talking about Game 5 tonight in the Cup Final. You can go check that out. And, of course, all the reaction to the dumb green team winning the championship will be there, too. Locked On Sports Today 24/7. All right, Big V, off-season improvements for Jakob Poeltl. As I mentioned off the top, there's a reason we're saving this for the final segment. We kind of know what Jakob Poeltl is, right? Iffy free throw shooter who's probably good enough at this point that it doesn't make mathematical sense to hack him. That's nice. Really good interior scorer when he, whether it's push shots off of dump offs or as a pick and roll finisher, he's got all that down. We know he does the stuff from the elbows very nicely. We know at his best, he's like probably one of the more mobile rim protector, sort of traditional drop bigs there is. Like, he can range out to the level of the screen a little bit more effectively than a lot of your traditional drop bigs can. Not his perfect position or anything like that. You don't really want him switching necessarily all the time, but at his best, he is a perfectly cromulent, very nice sort of backbone to a pick and roll defense. What is there in Yak's package that you would like to see maybe improved or refined over the course of this summer to better make him a fit with the current Raptors roster? We can go and say it'd be great if he shot threes. That's not realistic. Is there something that is realistic that you kind of look at, just like a little tweak in the way he plays that could better set him up for success and the Raptors up for success next year?
Well, I mean, I think the thing it seems he works hardest on is his free throws. And so if there could just be an uptick there, I think that would go a long way. I think, we've seen him get hacked at times where other teams have just seen the opportunity to, that being the best PPP outcome. And so I think, if he could just have an uptick there, that'd be a boost. Mm-hmm. At this point, it doesn't seem realistic to want to expect any kind of jumper outside of 12 feet. And so, in terms of the efficiency around the basket, that's really strong. Again, we'd have to get into really granular stuff in terms of what we'd want to see change, like maybe a few more illegal screens, a few less illegal screens
No,
nice.
More illegal screens. I went to the school of Serge Ibaka and Mark Gasol. More moving screens.
But yeah, I think besides that, as you said, we know what he is as a player. We know what he brings to the table, and maybe that's part of what contributes to some of the narratives that we've seen around him. And I think that's where you got to remind people of, in terms of what you have in hand with him as a player, with him as a leader, there's plenty to that.
Yeah. If you look at his just statistical profile, man, just utter consistency for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Like, he's just the same guy every year. And, it'd be nice if there could be, a couple extra feet that he can step out and hit that push shot, things like that, right? Like, all these little sort of intricacies. Can he refine his passing, just a touch out of those high post actions? Can he become a better keeper play guy? I think we've seen moments against the right matchups where, for example, I think of Kristaps Porzingis, for example. One of the few guys who Jakob Poeltl really seemed to sun this year was Kristaps, where, he kind of had to have the ball in those keeper situations, put it on the deck, just kind of barrel through Porzingis' chest and score. It'd be nice to see him have a little bit more of that sort of juice with the ball in his hands, right? Like, he's got the footwork for it. He's got a pretty sort of deft touch. I don't think his handle is like sort of NBA 2K, totally underpowered, like 20 out of 100 handle. You know what I mean, right? Like, there's a little bit of dexterity and touch there. So maybe that's something you can work on. I also just think sort of the constant refinement of his understanding of how to provide space to the other guys who are trying to, garner rim pressure, things like that. RJ Barrett, Scottie Barnes, Immanuel Quickley, how he can still navigate within the 12 feet that he kind of operates on offense while not getting in the way of people. And I think he's always been pretty good at that. Like, he did that pretty wonderfully, I think, considering he was playing with Scottie Barnes and Pascal Siakam for a whole season, right? Like, he managed to make that work just enough. I wonder if that gets easier, if there's just a little bit less clutter on the floor than the Raptors have had in the past. And I do think, that there's his ability to sort of finish plays around the rim, affect a defense just by being a sort of threat to maybe make it a second guess in your mind of, do we actually send 2 to Scottie Barnes here or 2 to RJ Barrett because out of the fear of the dump off pass. Like, I think that's a really effective thing he does to sort of shape the defense and offer space even while not being a traditional shooter. But there's always a constant refinement of that, right? And kind of learning how you play off of your teammates and whatnot. So I guess that's something. I am curious. We didn't really get to see a whole lot of Kelly Olynyk and Jakob Poeltl. Poeltl went down pretty soon after the Kelly Olynyk acquisition. What are your hopes, dreams for that 2-man pairing? Do you think there's enough there in terms of, defensive insulation with Yak to make those viable defensively? Offensively, I think there's a lot to like with Kelly Olynyk kind of working and spacing and doing the elbow creation thing on his own. He can kind of put the ball on the deck a little bit, get downhill. Like, I think there's something there as far as how those two guys and their skill sets blend, especially on offense. What are you kind of envisioning? Is that a lineup, a configuration you want to see a lot of, or would you prefer to just kind of see mostly Scottie Barnes at the 4 and playing with Yak and not go with that Olynyk Yak front court, which may be a little bit sort of molasses footed, to be kind?
I think the only way I'd want to see it is if the perimeter defense dramatically improves.
Right.
I think when you watch the starting lineup play, for example, so much of why I feel that works defensively is because of what Scottie and Yak do together on the back end, and how much they're able to clean up what happens in front of them. And I think unless Quickley and RJ make significant strides, I think it will be tough to be in a situation, because say, for example, even if you have Scottie, Kelly, and Yak on the floor at the same time, ideally you would still want Scottie on the back line. But you don't have that choice, right? Because you're completely screwing over Kelly if you do that. And so
Kelly, go guard Jason Tatum.
Yeah. And so I think you're going to be put in situations where, they're just going to get Kelly involved in pick and roll situations and attack off that. And I think that's going to have a cascading effect on the defense, and not a good one. So I wouldn't want to see too much of it unless, again, the perimeter defense improves a significant amount.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Man, what a game changer it would be if Scottie Barnes can just like be a really good 6'9" wing defender, huh? Like, it would change a lot. It would open up a whole lot of possibilities, I think. Man, maybe it happens, right? Like, I think just like the way his body works and his like hip positioning and stuff like that makes it pretty difficult to see a world in which he's ever like an ace shutdown wing guy. But he is long as hell. He is strong. He is enormous. Like, maybe there's something there. If that's the case, then man, I think this thing gets accelerated even more quickly than we feel like it even can. Like it would be like maybe the single biggest swing skill on the entire Toronto Raptors team is if Scottie Barnes could figure out how to be just like a lockdown wing defender. Man, would be pretty tight. That's for Scottie Barnes episode for the future, or the past. I guess we did that episode already. Either way, Big V, that feels like it for today. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there now that you're back and doing NBA stuff?
In terms of stuff going forward, probably still continue to do my thing with Sportsnet. I will absolutely get back to the Substack Raptors in 7. I know it's been a bit of a hiatus, but it's been a crazy 3 weeks. But I
not
am
exactly
very
much
excited to get
going
back
on
to
the last few weeks in the Raptors world anyway, man. You're good.
So yeah, I think definitely look forward to more of that. And besides that, you can follow me on Twitter at Vivek Jacob.
Hell yeah, everyone. Go support Big V. We're thrilled to have you back, buddy. We'll be back again tomorrow with episode TBD. I'm calling a CBL game in the morning tomorrow, and so it's going to throw off my usual scheduled time. Go check it out. Riverline Shooting Stars. It's going to be a banger. 11 o'clock, CBL Plus, TSN Plus. Go do it. But yeah, we'll figure out tomorrow's podcast when we get to it. We've also got Jamar Hines coming up later this week. We've got big boards to get to. I still want to do an episode about a few more wing prospects we haven't talked about yet, in particular Johnny Furphy, Pacome Dadier, and Bobby Klintman. It'll be the all bust name podcast. So yeah, that's to look forward to. And we will, of course, have the draft covered in full in just ridiculous detail next week. Very excited for all of that as well. But we will leave you with the rest of your day now. Thank you for being here. Thanks for supporting the show. Subscribe, follow, rate, review, join the Discord, link in the description, etc., etc. And we will talk to you again on Wednesday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. I hit the ceiling. That was pathetic. Oh my God.